In terms of one of the other reasons why I've told Andre this before is that a lot of my friends, when I first got to New York, there's always those people who you look up to. I think Mr. Braugher had mentioned that the idea of Denzel and maybe Morgan Freeman, they weren't there because he couldn't give his dad those examples. For me, we did have those examples, right? But it was always Andre Braugher. Andre Braugher was the singular person that was like, that's the career we want. Someone who was respected in TV, film, and on stage. It wasn't the other household names like Denzel. Nothing wrong with him. I've worked with him, and as is he. Nothing like that. But it was always amongst my friends, Andre Braugher. So, with that said, we knew that Andre Braugher had a family. So, oftentimes people have some fear of engaging in the arts because it's like, I actually do want a family. Can I have a family while I pursue this thing? So you have 3 young men?
Yes.
And a wonderful wife, Amy?
Yes.
And do you mind sharing that aspect of building a family as you're building your career? Challenges or even,
There's challenges. So I met this lovely gal back in 1988, the summer of 1988, and I fell entirely in love with her. And what it turned out is that we had basically grown up in the same neighborhood in different cities, same characters, same challenges, same, joys, the aunts, the uncles, the people down the street. So what we've shared for an entire career is like-mindedness. So like-mindedness is the essential element that allows people to be productive together. If we're on a bus and she wants to go to Milan and I want to go to Paris, one of us is going to be very unhappy. And so what we have is a bus that in bright letters, the red front of the bus is where we want to go as a family. This is even before we had children. Where do we want to go as a family? What's our destination? And so we continue to work toward that destination, and we tussle along the way about whether we should go through the tunnel or over the mountain, whether we should stay on the motorway or take the side roads, whether we should stop and let the rain pass, or whether we should power on through. We tussle about the means, and the different ways, but we don't tussle about what the ultimate destination is. So ultimately, you too will get an opportunity to join your life with another flawed individual, and it's a heck of a challenge with tremendous amounts of reward. But I will say like-mindedness is by far the ultimate strength of the relationship and allows it to endure and to remain independent. She's an actress also, and I believe a very talented one. The business of acting in America does not honor, cherish, congratulate, and employ Black actresses. And I've been there to watch it happen. My wife is quite talented. She has not had the opportunities that I have, because this is America. And so we continue to work to change that, but she is an example of I believe, a superbly talented woman who's coming into her fore, but yet this is where we are, this is where we live, It was more acceptable for me as a man, albeit Black, to succeed, to be offered roles, to have the opportunity than it ever was for her. I remember back in the 80s, people were like, "Oh, bro, you're working all the time, man." So what happens is that I don't have a tremendous number of auditions. I just book the job, right? I say to myself, in May, I've got to get a job this summer, right? So each and every one of these auditions, which are not 15 and 16, they're more like 3 or 4. I've got to book them, you know what I mean? because otherwise I'm going to be down at the temp agency or whatever, or driving that taxi again or whatever, you know. And the business has allowed me to go on, you know, but my wife has not had those same opportunities. And so that's been a struggle, that's been a pain. She's an optimistic, cheerful, hardworking, loving person, so she hasn't allowed it to make her bitter. But what can I say? It's not fair. Well, no one who's told you it's going to be fair, but you know, it's not fair. And we live with that every day. But the one thing that I know that always is there along is that my career is in a certain way her career, and I try to share my joy with her, but I also try to make sure that I satisfy her aims with my career also. So when it comes to the casting, or who's going to be a part of it, or who we're working with, or what organizations we support, you know, her input is a vital part of that. Because I can't imagine in a certain way, having enjoyed the successes that I have, not enjoyed those specific successes because I wasn't allowed to audition for the piece, you know. It was, in my mind, a stunning sort of reversal of typical television, that I was playing Frank Pembleton with a lead role that wasn't about how angry black men are, but was really about how brilliant this one detective is, you know, in the midst of this urban, you know, crime wave that's killing people, you know. And it had a moral dimension, and Tom Fontana was just writing something brilliant, and I was cast in that, which was stunning, you know. And I did 6 years on that show, which was the foundation of my entire career in television and film. And I use that to promote her goals, because we're like-minded, and the things that we support with our time and our money, and you know, the fact that I'm here on CTH, I mean, I'm in love with this man. We met, you may not remember this, we met, yes, on the campus of Oberlin, because my son Michael, I convinced him to audition for, he was in Macbeth, right? And Justin Ameka was directing. Justin Ameka was directing that production, and he was also the same director of your inaugural production at Marcus Garvey, right? And so, which I didn't get a chance to see, but my family raved about it, you know. So it's at that moment I said to myself, you know, when we find people who are like-minded, we have to bind ourselves to them like with hoops of steel, right? It's like advice that I've received during the course of my life, you know. If you're dealing with bad people, a good contract will only get you a good lawsuit, right? So stay out of interacting with bad people, and when you find good people, join yourself with them, right? So, you know, there's nothing that this man couldn't ask me to do within my power that I wouldn't do, you know. And so this is what I mean about like-mindedness. He won't sing his own praises, so let me sing this just for a moment. The Classical Theatre of Harlem did not have an excellent reputation. The Classical Theatre of Harlem, before Ty arrived, was a plantation in which black actors, very well trained, intelligent, committed black actors, were basically wasted in what would you call it, in a narcissistic effort to create, you know, some sort of classical thing in Harlem. And their reputation was abysmal, right? So I would talk to my friends, I said, oh, I got a call from Classical Theatre of Harlem. They're like, don't go down there, right? So here's Ty Jones, who's decided to, as an actor, that he's going to do what he can to resurrect the power and the majesty of this idea of Classical Theatre of Harlem. The Classical Theatre of Harlem that you see today, that you hear about today, that has productions of Marcus Garvey Park, this is entirely dependent upon the commitment, the resources, the love, and you know, the skill that Ty has put into it. Now, he wouldn't tell you about this, but he made the Classical Theatre of Harlem from nothing. And one of the ways that I know that he's a very, very loving man is the Classical Theatre of Harlem had a tremendous amount of debt, right? And I would have said, well, they're bankrupt, you know, let them and the name go and build your own theater. But he had a tremendous love for what the Classical Theatre of Harlem could be and its name, that eventually he took on debts that he didn't incur from wasteful managers, and he remade the theater in his own image. And it's been a tremendous success. Now, no theater grows overnight, right? And so we continue to go step by step to that point where, you know, we'll be a very well-established theater. But Ty Jones made the Classical Theatre of Harlem with the cooperation of other like-minded people. But without Ty Jones, there is no Classical Theatre.